our first guest of the day, and that is the one and only Peter King, Football Morning in America. Peter, there's no one we'd rather have the thoughts of from day one than you. Who impressed you last night?
Well, Maggie, good to be on with you. I thought it was a really interesting night, obviously, because so much of it was unpredictable. And the one thing that really kind of stuck out to me was not necessarily that the quarterbacks dropped, and that Will Levis, who, I think most people thought was going, somewhere in the top 10, as high as number 4 to Indianapolis, plummeted out of the round. But I think that is a byproduct of the fact that everybody's opinions were so widely split on the quarterbacks. Nobody felt, you couldn't find consensus really on any of these quarterbacks. But obviously with the draft, it only takes one. It only takes one team to love Anthony Richardson, and so he goes fourth. The one other thing that interested me in this draft is the impact that a lot of the new and young general managers had on the process. Monty Austin-Ford, of the Arizona Cardinals, obviously went down to 12, and then came back up to 6, and ended up with the best tackle in the draft and a lot of draft capital for the future. So a lot of the young general managers, I thought, really made a mark on the process.
So the Houston Texans traded from 12 to 3. Peter, Maggie and I were just a little bit worried about what they gave up in this trade, because it's next year's number 1 pick, and if they're not good, then this could be a very high pick. Reason for Texans fans to be a bit nervous?
Oh, I would be if I were a Texans fan, no question about it, because, look, what Nick Caserio did, the general manager of the Texans, what Nick Caserio did is treat Will Anderson like a franchise quarterback. And, and he may well be. He may well be a great, great player. But I was very surprised how much they gave up. And they gave up their 1-3 next year, as well as basically a top pick in the second round this year, and obviously the 12th pick. They gave up a monstrous sum for a guy who, I'm just telling you, I don't know a lot of people who think he's going to be Bruce Smith. Now, he's a very good player, but he's got to be a borderline Hall of Fame pass rusher to justify everything that Nick Caserio paid for him.
Peter King joining us, Football Morning in America, NBC Sports, of course. And it yet almost seemed like it was a pick to satisfy the owner, maybe, with the quarterback, and a pick to satisfy the new head coach and DeMeco Ryans with the pass rusher. Peter, why do you think Will Levis fell out of the first round?
Maggie, I think that there's a lot of people who were concerned about Will Levis and how he performed last year when you think about it, he lost Wan'Dale Robinson to the Giants. He lost his offensive coordinator to the Rams, Liam Cohen. He lost a couple of very important offensive linemen to the NFL. And so he had a much lesser team, and he just didn't play well. Threw a lot of picks, was indecisive at times. The guy's got a great arm, and I think with good skill people around him, he can be a good quarterback. But I just think, I'm not sure it's people saying we don't like Will Levis, but who needed a quarterback after the first 3 teams, pick quarterbacks, 3 of the first 4 pick quarterbacks? Who after that had a desperate need for a quarterback? You might say, well, maybe the Raiders, but the Raiders just signed Jimmy Garoppolo. They're going to play with him for the next couple of years, I would think, at least. And so there wasn't really a team after the very top guys who, drafted quarterbacks who had what I would call a real crying need for a quarterback. Now, I forced, in my mock draft, a quarterback to Minnesota, figuring that hey, Kirk Cousins has had 5 years. He's won one playoff game. And when his contract expires at the end of this year, he'll be a $45 or $50 million player. Do you want to pay Kirk Cousins that money, or do you want to get a Hendon Hooker type or Will Levis ready to be the next guy in Minnesota at a very reasonable rate of pay for 4 years? So that's who needs a quarterback, maybe. But there just aren't that many teams right now that, in my opinion, have a crying need for a quarterback.
So the Colts did take Anthony Richardson. Everyone's saying he's going to need some time to learn the NFL, but we know how this goes, Peter. Often rookies get rushed in the process. When do you expect to see Anthony Richardson play?
I think, Andrew, it all depends what he's like in training camp. Because Shane Steichen is not going to put a guy out there who's not ready. He's got Gardner Minshew, and everybody will just roll their eyes. Oh my God, Gardner Minshew! But you'd rather have a guy who has been there, done that before, and is not going to get cowed by the situation. You'd rather have that guy than a very inexperienced player in Anthony Richardson, because at the end of the day, look, Anthony Richardson has got tremendous talent, but it sort of reminds me a little bit of Zach Wilson 2 years ago when everybody was saying, oh my God, what an athlete, what an arm, oh my God, he's an unbelievable prospect. And he got fed to the Wolves, and now there's not a Jets fan who wants to see him ever play for the Jets again. So you've got to be really careful, and Steichen has got to be careful, in my opinion, of not throwing Anthony Richardson in before he's ready.
Peter King joining us. Football Morning in America, NBC Sports. We're talking about the first round of the NFL draft from last night. And Peter, obviously we mentioned already concern that, Houston may have given up too much to get up to 3 to get Will Anderson. Was there another head scratcher moment from you last night where you're like, man, what's a team thinking with that pick?
I thought there were a couple of really interesting ones. Number one, Maggie, remember a few days ago when everybody poo-pooed, the Jets only went from 13 to 15. So it's not really a huge drop. But, honestly, the Jets may have lost their linemen in the process by just moving down 2 spots, because the Steelers moving up and taking the Georgia tackle that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people thought. I was talking to a general manager yesterday who said to me, and look, I don't know this factually, but who said, listen, we all thought that was going to be the Jets pick at 13. And, and then the Jets didn't take a tackle in the first round, and that really surprised me. You got Aaron Rodgers, you got a really good defense, and I don't know, do you really need to take another front 7 player? That surprised me, what the Jets did. I think the other thing sort of later in the round that surprised me, I thought Jalen Hyatt, the receiver, the fast receiver from Tennessee, I thought, he was Kansas City's guy, and I didn't think he was going to get to Kansas City unless Kansas City traded up. The Chiefs were trying hard to trade up in the round, and I'm not sure for whom, but they were trying hard to trade up, and then they ended up staying at 31 and taking a defensive lineman for Kansas State who I never heard of. I didn't know who this guy was. And so, but, again, look, they're Super Bowl champions. I'll never criticize Brett Veach, for doing that. I think the only other thing that I thought was a little different in this draft is that there's a really good corner from Oregon, and corners are so valuable these days. And the Patriots were able to get him in the middle of the round, Christian Gonzalez. Were able to get him in the middle of the round, and the 2 or 3 general managers I talked to after the draft last night, 2 of the 3, I should say, really thought that was a great pick for the Patriots and a puzzling drop of Christian Gonzalez.
Peter, sorry, just a quick follow-up on that, Peter, just on the Jets situation. Do you think Rodgers is going to feel any type of way about the Jets going defense with that first pick? Do you think that's going to bother him at all?
I mean, it might bother him slightly, but he's in a honeymoon period now. I doubt he's going to be too upset about that or about anything. I think the Jets probably have convinced themselves that Mekhi Becton finally, after 3 very disappointing years, is going to be scared straight and is finally going to show up and play at a decent level this year. Will that happen? I don't know. But I think if I were Rodgers, I certainly would have wanted to tackle in that spot.
Peter, by the way, Felix and Aduki Uzoma stopped by our set yesterday. He's from Kansas City, and you would love him. He's a great guy, the guy the Chiefs took.
Oh, yeah.
Local product. Yeah. Were you surprised about both running back picks? Bijan Robinson, 8 to the Falcons, and Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 to the Lions.
I was surprised that 2 backs obviously went the top 12. I thought Gibbs was going to go at the end, near the end of the round. But the Lions kind of picked 2 players a lot earlier than most people in the league thought they would be picked. And so to me, and again, look, Jahmyr Gibbs is a very, very talented guy. And I think it just goes to show you that, look, the Detroit Lions last year got really, really good toward the end of the year by being a dominant running team. And I think that, when I saw them pick Jahmyr Gibbs, I just thought Dan Campbell is not wavering. He's going to say, just like Bill Parcells, his mentor, used to say, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be able to run the ball competently. And we're not going to have a lot of running plays necessarily, but we're going to make you stop us. And when they made that pick last night, I said, Dan Campbell is following in Parcells' footsteps.
Peter, last one for you from me. If you were going to, 2 teams that I think most people believe had a good night last night, one Seattle, 2 the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. Did you like one a little bit more than the other?
Well, I really like the fact that Seattle got a guy who should be, I mean, at least to me, Devin Witherspoon should be an all-pro quarterback. I think he is an absolutely terrific player, and he's a physical player. He is going to rekindle the old Legion of Boom, thoughts when you're watching Seattle play defense. He's a very, very physical guy. And then, to be able to get the guy a lot of people thought was the best receiver in this draft at a time when your receiving core is showing some age, I thought was really, really good. And look, I think John Schneider did a really good job. I think John Schneider is a great general manager, not a good one. He's a great one. And I think he did an excellent job of convincing the world, his peers and the media, that he was either taking Jalen Carter or a quarterback at number 5. As he did. He convinced everybody that he was going to do that. Then he takes the corner at 5, and he takes a receiver at 20. And both of those guys should be cornerstone players for him. As far as the Eagles go, I mean, this thing with Georgia is a little weird. They've now got 4 high picks from Georgia's front 7 in the last 2 drafts. It's just, and look, Georgia's had a great defensive team. So I'm not saying, boy, bad pick. It's just oddly coincidental. And look, there's a lot of teams in the league. I know one of them. Some teams, Maggie, when they pick or when they go over their draft board and when they take players off the board, they don't actually remove the player from their board. Some teams turn his card on the board upside down. And I know one team that really had a need at that position had his card turned upside down. They weren't taking him under any circumstances. And look, everybody is going to be watching this very, very closely to see, how much this guy loves football. Is he going to be an Allen Iverson practice? Who cares about practice guy? I don't think he's going to be able to playing in the NFL and playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's going to have to be a harder worker in the NFL than he was in college.
Peter, can't tell you how much we appreciate this. We know it's a busy time for you. Thanks for your insight, and enjoy the rest of the draft.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate you calling and having me on.